Playing killer can be difficult and frustrating, since as killer you have to manage so many things by yourself. So today I've brought you 5 tips that are simple to implement in your playstyle, but will go a long way into making you a better killer. The first one is, don't go for one person at the start. As you play killer, you'll begin to figure out survivor spawn points and how their spawn patterns work. Oftentimes, there will be a survivor that spawns by themselves and maybe 2 or 3 that spawn together. Many killers will choose to go for the one survivor that's closer to them rather than the 3 survivors or 2 survivors that are further. This is a mistake. Even though you are able to start the chase sooner, you're only pressuring one person. If you go for multiple survivors at once, you're able to pressure all of them and they have to run away and find the generator to do somewhere else. One of the most common mistakes survivors make is sticking together way too much. You can take advantage of this by going to where multiple people are doing a generator with discordance maybe, and at the start of the match, if you have a perk like Lethal Pursuer, going for a big group of survivor, because you are able to pressure a lot of them at the same time, and this is worth it for you. The second tip is stop worrying so much about the first few generators and also stop kicking generators so much. I see this complaint all the time on killer discussions about how are killers supposed to play the game when by the time I hook one person there's 2 generators already done. While I get it, this is frustrating, over time you learn that this isn't the end of the world, not even in the slightest. I have so many games where I'll hook one person at 2 generators done and I'll end up winning the game with 2 generators left. This is because fundamentally the killer gets stronger as the game goes on, as there are less generators to patrol and less pallets for the survivors to work with. So never stress too much when the first few generators fly, especially if you're a setup killer that has needed time to set up your web to get the game going for you. The second part of this is kicking generators too much. There should really only be 2 reasons you ever kick a generator. One is if you have a perk that you benefit from, like Nowhere to Hide, Eruption, Call of Brine, Overcharge, or number 2, you're fairly certain the survivors won't be able to get to it in quite a long time. For example, if you find an area with a lot of survivors working on a generator and you scare them all off, you can kick the generator being fairly confident that they won't come back to tap it anytime soon. Because remember, it takes a survivor about half a second to stop a generator from regressing. So make sure that if you kick a generator without any perks that you benefit from, that they won't be able to get to it in a long time. I actually won this game that you see in the background, even though I was doing horribly when the first few generators were done. I ended up getting 3 kills in the end. The third one, and probably the most common one, is not letting a chase go. This is something I see with a lot of newer killers and even killers with a good amount of time into the game. There are quite a few reasons why you shouldn't chase a survivor, and the first example I'll give you is that if they're leading you to a part of the map where there aren't any generators, which means that by the time you down them, you'll have to walk a long time to get to the generators, you should really think about whether or not it's worth chasing them. Obviously, if you're really ahead, go for it, you're probably not going to lose the game, and if you're really behind, it might be a risk that you want to take to try and bring the game back, but in general, if a survivor is leading you from the generators, you might just want to ignore them. The second reason is if they take you to a really strong structure. For example, for me on the swamp map with the big dock thingy, I pretty much always avoid it when a survivor starts leading me to it. I'm like, yep, I'm not taking a chase there, no matter what killer I'm playing unless it's nurse. This is because it's just going to be such a long time to down them and that structure is just way too strong to deal with it. Another example is the Dead Dog Saloon, with the main saloon having a lot of windows and a lot of doors that you have to break just to catch up with a survivor. It's probably not worth it. Here's a mistake the survivors make that you can easily take advantage of, and that is doing the generator in these strong structures. When I see someone working on the Dead Dog Saloon generator, I'll just look up at them, nod, and walk away. It's not worth it to go and patrol it. It just takes a long time getting up there, and having to chase in that building just sucks. If the survivors were smart, they would leave that generator until the end, forcing you to patrol it. But the thing is, most survivors don't know about this, and most survivors won't do this. So don't be tempted by survivors doing a generator in your face like the one in Dead Dog Saloon. Just ignore it and find an easier chase to take, and when the generator gets done, you won't have to worry about the main building again. The fourth one, which I won't spend too much time on, is tunneling at the wrong time. A lot of killers will say that despite survivors being upset about this, tunneling is a fairly effective strategy, and I think this is blown a little bit out of proportion. Tunneling can be very effective, but it can also be very detrimental. For example, if the person you're tunneling is a really good looper, it's probably not smart to tunnel. If they have Dead Hard or Off the Record or MFT, it's probably gonna be a bad time for you. If they're running into a strong structure, you probably don't want to tunnel them and chase them. The only time I found tunneling to actually be effective is if the person you're tunneling is not all that good. As mean as it is, if you need to win a game, tunnel the weak link out. That's how you're able to turn a game around as killer, not just tunneling the first survivor you hook, even if they're a god looper. You're probably gonna lose that game. The fifth and last one is something that actually happens outside of the game, and it's that you need to not use perks that don't synergize with your killer. I'll give you a few examples of this just so you can get a good idea, but you really need to be thinking about the perks you're running and how they work with your killer power. The first one, and one I see with a lot of beginners, is using basic attack perks on powers that don't count as a basic attack. For example, Sloppy Butcher on Nurse is useless since her Blink Lunge doesn't count as a basic attack. Same with Jolt on killers like Blight, who also don't count as a basic attack. Killers like Nemesis and Alien, who use their whip a lot, which don't count as basic attacks. Don't run basic attack perks on them, they won't work. Let me add a quick little correction. Basic attack perks can be good on Nemesis since his whip isn't all that strong and sometimes you are forced to M1. A good example of killers that do use this well are Singularity, Spirit, pretty much any M1 killer that also has a chase power and is going to be getting a lot of different hits. It's going to feel so good to run them. And having something like Sloppy and Jolt on Spirit just makes you such a beast. That's a good example of synergy working with the killer's power. Here's one that I also see quite a bit, and it's running Lethal Pursuer on Hag or Trapper. Now, this is not detrimental per se, but it's not really useful either. You're spending the start of the match setting up. Why would you need to know where the survivors are? Sure, it's probably good to know the spread of them and what generators they're going to, but is it really worth a perk slot? Probably not. I wouldn't really use this on Hag or Trapper. Another example is using info perks on Doctor. One info perk is probably fine, but more than one, it becomes questionable. Doctor already has a lot of way to get info via his static blast, or if a survivor is in Madness tier 3, let's just be screaming randomly. You want to limit it to one info perk on Doctor, because why else do you need more than that? It's already built into his power. Here's one that's a bit tricky for some people to understand, but I'll try to explain it, and it's running Sloppy Butcher on Legion. You might think that, I'm gonna injure everybody, and then I'm gonna hit them with my basic attack, and then they're gonna be injured even more, and they're gonna waste time healing. The thing is, with Legion, you don't want to discourage people to heal. That's bad because, believe it or not, Legion's main strength is playing against players that keep healing no matter how many times they get hit with your power. If you put something like Sloppy in there, what's the point? You're gonna make them not want to heal, and then they're just gonna do generators instead. So make sure that on Legion, you let survivors heal, because they're just wasting your time. You can injure them again so easily. And the last one is one that I actually used to do, but I realized that it's dumb, and it's using Save the Best for Last on Wesker. Now, at first, this seems like a good idea because you can build up stacks chasing your non-obsessions, and when you run into your obsession, you'll just hit them with your power and keep all your stacks, right? Well, the problem with that is you want to be infecting people with your power, even if they're not your obsession. At best, you'll only be getting one stack per chase since you'll probably hit them with an infection and then you'll hit them with an M1 and only get one stack. It's not a good idea to have this on Wesker. And hopefully these are just examples, there's probably more. Hopefully these are enough to give you the right thought process to be like, does this really work with my killer power? Probably, probably not. You'll have to make that decision for yourself. So those are the 5 tips that I think will make a big difference in your games. But if flashlights are also something you struggle against, I have a full guide that should be on screen right now. And that's all, everyone. Peace.